we're going to talk about contrasting the difference between the cash dividend and stock repurchase, right? So cash dividend, there is a theory which is called the bird in the hand theory. The bird in the hand theory basically says, you know, if you give cash dividend to the investors, investor will be happy. They have the dividend cash in their hands. It's better than if you stock repurchase them, the investor really doesn't know where that cash really go, right? So the bird in hand theory basically say, there's a sure cash, you distribute cash to every investors, so everyone get the same amount based upon the shares that they hold. And then investors pay taxes on the cash dividend. So that's the disadvantage of cash dividend, is that if I'm an investor and I receive cash dividend, then I have to pay personal taxes on that dividend that is being paid by the company. And cash dividend payments also is sticky. What does that mean? If I'm given $5 cash dividend every year, then I would expect that every year I get $5 cash dividend or more, right? So I was going to expect more. But if I get less or no dividend at all, right? So for instance, Starbucks stopped the cash dividend in 2009, right? Whole Foods stopped their cash dividend in 2010. That was a bad signal to the investors, because investors start panicking and say, wait a minute, where is our cash dividend, right? So once you pay the cash dividend, it tends to stick. It's not going to go away. So that means once the company issue dividend, cash dividend, then there must be some sort of signaling that the companies or the top managements are confident that they're going to be able to pay that cash dividend for this period, next period, and the future period. That means there is some sort of management confidence. So there is a positive signaling there that the company will be able to pay cash dividend now in the future. But also there is a negative signaling of this cash dividend. That means that if you give back cash back to the shareholders, then basically management give the signal that they don't know what to do with this excess cash in their hand. They don't have investment opportunity. That means this company have limited investment opportunity, and therefore they have to give this cash back to the investors. So for some investor who prefer the growth over the cash dividend, they may also de-invest or not investing in this company anymore, right? And investors reinvest cash dividend to buy stock. If the investors reinvest their cash dividend to buy stock, then it's not optimal to give the cash dividend, because the investors are being taxed, and then after tax they reinvest it back to this company's stock, right? And therefore, let's take a look at the alternative. If you don't want to pay cash dividend, then the alternative is stock repurchase. So, how do you distribute cash in terms of stock repurchase? You can distribute cash in one time, because you can dispose a lump sum, like Microsoft dispose a lump sum of cash one time to the dividend in terms of the stock repurchase, not dividend, in a large amount, right? And then also it's not sticky. Investors usually pay less taxes, and investor doesn't keep track of how much the stock repurchase that the company do every year. But this one also has a negative signal, because if you repurchase stock, that means you also indicate that the management think that this company are not doing, the ability to grow is getting limited, right? So there is some negative signaling in terms of stock repurchase. You may also bid up the price of the stock, because if the company buying the stock, then the demand for that stock is higher, the stock price goes up. Also, the company need to declare this stock repurchase plan within the next 2, 3 years or 5 year stock repurchase plan. That means it has to be planned out, right? Where the cash dividend, usually you just roll it every year, the same amount or increase in the small amount, right? So that is the advantage and disadvantage of cash dividends versus stock repurchase. Now, let's give 2 examples of these, one example each of this cash dividend versus stock repurchase example. So here in the first example, suppose a firm has a net income of 100 million. This is from the previous example. And it has a target equity of 60% of equity. That means it's 40% debt. Its total capital budget, let's say, is $50 million. And there are 2 million shares outstanding for this company. So what is the cash dividend per share for this company? we use the distribution model, right? The pure residual distribution model, which is equal to net income, which is 100 million, minus the target equity ratio, which is 60%, times $5 million, which is the total capital budget, right? And we end up with 70 million of distribution. And in this case, distribution is in terms of cash dividend. So the cash dividend is the total of 70 million, and if you divide the 70 million with 200 million share outstanding, then you get about 35 cents per share cash dividend. So that's how the cash dividend works. Now let's take a look at the stock repurchase example. This example is simple, just a company has 5 million excess cash, right? Currently it has 2 million share outstanding, and the current stock price is at $20. What is the price after stock repurchase? So we need 4 steps to solve this problem. First, we're going to calculate how many shares can we repurchase with $5 million at the current stock price of $20 per share, whereas $5 million divided by $20 per share, which is $250,000 shares repurchased. Number of shares repurchased is 250,000 shares. And then share outstanding after repurchase, that's step 2, is basically 2 million share outstanding minus the number of shares that is being repurchased, which is 250,000 shares. So the share outstanding after repurchase will be 1,750,000 share outstanding. Now let's take a look at the value of the company, or value of the operation, right? That's basically the market value of the company after stock repurchase. Before stock repurchase, the market value of the equity is going to be equal to $20 per share times 2 million share outstanding, which basically is $40 million. But we subtracted $5 million to be used for stock repurchase. So we end up with the value of operation after stock repurchase of $35 million. So if we divide $35 million with 1,750,000 shares, we're going to get $20 per share. So from this example, what does that mean? First of all, in the dividend, we don't see any stock price effects here. And the stock repurchase also, we don't see any stock price effects. Distribution is distribution, right? You basically distribute excess cash to the hand of the shareholders. Now, of course, this doesn't consider the tax effects, and also doesn't consider the signaling effects that we have talked about in the previous statement that we discussed.